this is all great. I'm glazing over half of it and I'm really tuned in with the other half. But how do I sell it, to my customers? Like,
we're all doing this for the end wearer. Welcome to the Dudes of Thread podcast. The Dudes of Thread podcast is here to open your mind when it comes to specialty embroidery, applique, patchwork, and multimedia. From ideation to design to sourcing, we want to help you help your customers elevate their merchandise.
We've done the research, made the mistakes, and are excited to share this nerdy fashion content. Join us as we decorate our way to creativity, one stitch at a time.
Good there. Okay. Episode 5.
Welcome back to the Dudes of Thread podcast. Thank you for joining for episode number 5. We're super excited to keep this going and sharing our love of embroidery and applique and specialty threads. I am here, as always, with Mr. Joe Kramar, master digitizer, R&D specialist. Joe, thanks for joining me today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy. It's great to be here. We have got a great show for you guys tonight. We had just such a ton of fun on the last episode, and we've got people guessing stitch counts all over the place. That's just really fun to see their guesses. We have got some great feedback on the last several shows, and we're really excited to bring that to you today. So thanks for joining us. It wouldn't be a show without my partner here joining me, Mr. Jeremy Picker. He is creative director and CEO of Amber Creative, as well as the PPAI Top 18 Influencers for the 2022-23 year.
That was a nice surprise. I don't do this for the influence. I do it for the love of it, but it's kind of cool to be recognized in our industry. So yeah, I'm loving it, man. This week has gone by so fast, and every week I look forward to ending the week out with a Dudes of Thread podcast, and we're on number 5, so super stoked. We did one episode last year, and then this is our 4th in a row, so I think we're starting to make it a habit, no matter how difficult it might be doing client work, but it pumps me up, and it's nice to end the week on a high note and talk about stuff that we love. So, I mean, how can we complain?
Right, exactly. And one of the things too that I remember that we got some amazing feedback from our last show was just showing some B-roll of just things that we're working on, things that we like. I really dig the fact that Jeremy and I both have been gathering up a tremendous amount of nostalgia, and whether it's patches or old Abercrombie projects I remember working on, and we're buying them on eBay and doing everything we can to make it happen. I mean, Jeremy's got this amazing Indian headdress piece, and I think the best part I loved about that piece, Jeremy, was that it's actually a ton of embroidery decoration, and then they put that on a piece of fabric, and then they sewed the fabric to the garment. So I'm like, oh man, that's amazing, because you could take that off and put it on something else.
Yep, and we'll have a more in-depth look on that piece. I think that's going to be one of my prized pieces, because there's so many stitches, and it's so worn in and so soft. I'm pretty stoked on that. So Joe, as you know, I live on Pinterest when I'm not working. And so as I was adding more images to my board, and I know I talked about last week, I go to eBay and I find all these vintage pieces, and then I'll put them on my boards, because once they leave eBay, they won't be on the internet anymore. And so I've been just spending my nights while I'm, watching Netflix or whatever, adding them to my board. And last night I just got into vintage hat realm, and going through all these Ralph Lauren, Abercrombie, Hollister, American Eagle, all these old school hats. And, they show the front picture, and it either has applique or sewing thread embroidery. The bill is either nicked or grinded. The fabric is washed. But then as I go through some of the other pictures, they're showing the inside label, and in that picture, you can see the inside of the embroidery. And one thing I started noticing is all these brands, which, you know, I'm wearing right now, they do all the post-production washes and all the backing on the inside is gone. There's no stabilizer, there's no backing or inner
Yeah, there's no backing or inner lining or anything like that. It's just like if it was done in post-production, the decoration was done after the hat was made. Is what you're thinking.
Yes. So the hats, I'm seeing this leftover stabilizer still on the embroidery, and I was really confused because I thought they did all that, or I thought they eliminated all that in the washing post-production. So, you know, it was just one at first, and then I saw multiple hats, and all of them had the stabilizer still in it. So I was curious that are they creating just a line of branded blank hats and then they maybe decorate them domestically? But I just found it weird when they're charging $45 for a hat, and even if it's just basic embroidery, why there would still be backing. So it was just an interesting thing that I found. Do you have any insight, like when you worked at Abercrombie or from retail, of what they do? Or is it post-production, or are they sewing domestically sometimes?
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack.
Sorry.
in that specific scenario. I mean, I know that from the sourcing department standpoint, at least, you know, that I had previously worked for, we were asked very rarely to do hat developments. I think the hat factories probably had their forte. You know, they knew a lot better of what they were doing, so the designers and the graphic designers would be able to call that out, and they would be very successful with maybe one or two strikes, and they would, you know, they would go out. And I know there's some designers that would probably hear this conversation and say, "You're crazy, it was 6 strikes." Maybe that's true, but they were changing things that most likely didn't need to be changed. You know, they were just changing things because they could change them, or, you know, they felt some inspiration last minute. But it's not completely, you know, unfeasible to think that a program could exist where, you know, hey, you know what, we ordered the fabric, we're gonna go a different direction, go ahead and just make them blank and we'll decorate them later. But, you know, on like a dad hat, for example,
they were mostly
just
dad
seems
hats.
like, yeah, it would make the most sense to me, you know, that they would go ahead and decorate it while the panels are still off of the hat. But at the same time, though, I remember like a lot of Abercrombie hats, we had 2 layers, you know, of twill. Like you had the layer that took the decoration, and then it was eventually sewn to another layer that would hide the decoration, you know, on the inside of the hat. And that was very typical. So as far as, you know, how they're doing it and why they're doing it, you know, I mean, it's, you know, I'm not that good of my crystal ball doesn't work that good, but I really like the thought behind, like, how are they doing this? Because, you know, it's like every embroidery shop's prerogative how to embroider and get stitches to look best on a 3-dimensional surface.
True.
And, you know, with buckram in the hat, it's not that difficult at all to have that hat take a bunch of stitches, you know, take a heck of a needle pounding. But with dad hats, it's a completely different scenario. So if there's backing on a dad hat and it looks like it was done in post, most likely it was, because dad hats just don't have stability. You know, they're just maybe one piece of twill that's holding it all together. And even though twill's a woven, and a woven is amazing for stitching, and you can get away with murder with a woven, you know, piece of fabric. But if you're really hammering that fabric hard like Swiss cheese, and you're completely changing the physical properties of that fabric by replacing needle holes with thread, you know, something's got to give. So they got to put backing on it and really hold it down, you know, in that regard. So yeah, I mean, I just ran into a scenario where I've got this rule piece here I'll put up so folks can see it. and I found a piece of tearaway on the back of this thing, and so it's feasible that a piece of, let's say, rogue tearaway got in the mix of what's supposed to be washaway, because during this time we were pretty much exclusively using washaway.
They ran out,
especially on a t-shirt. They ran out, and the QC process is never perfect. You have the you're gonna test the 100th, the 1000th, the 10,000th piece, and do your best to make sure that there's no backing and everything meets standard and criteria. But it's definitely feasible to know that something like that could squeak through, especially like on your hat example. If it were me, I would stabilize that hat. But if it were me, I'd be doing the panels. I'd be sewing the panels before I would even think about sewing it to, because when you sew on a 3-dimensional surface, you have to punch the file differently. It's just everything behaves differently when it's flat versus when it's not flat. So
yeah, I just thought it was odd, because when you're selling a $45 hat with all the bells and whistles, inside taping, inside label, custom clasp, extra embroidery or woven labels, it just seemed odd that there were so many examples that I saw on eBay that had the backing in it. But it does make sense that, hey, let's order what we think is going to sell in retail, but then let's order an extra few thousand pieces that are blank. That way, as stores maybe start selling out, we can fill it in just in time, kind of domestically, to refill the retail stores instead of waiting another 2 months. So I get it. Right. It just seemed odd for those brands just letting it out there, because that's something you would find at Walmart, in my opinion, not with Ralph Lauren,
right,
and Abercrombie.
Right.
So,
and who knows? Maybe that was a project that went sideways, and they didn't want to lose out, so they said, let's just turn this into maybe that went to the outlets or something, and that was an outlet program. Happens all the time. So
it was just an interesting find. Yeah. Not that anyone cares or knows, but it was just something that it caught my eye while I was scrolling through Pinterest.
Exactly. A blip on the radar is still a blip on the radar, and that's why we talk about it, because if there's anybody out there that knows better than us, please comment. We would love to hear what that answer is.
For
Absolutely,
sure.
It'd be great. So one of the things I really have been resonated with in this, since this is our 5th episode now. So what I really like to share with our followers is that I got some really awesome feedback from my buddy Jason, who's been in the promotional product industry for a real long time, and he started off in the paper, because before the web, obviously everything was paper, and he's an absolute guru with anything from stickers all the way to massive order forms and tablets and just things that you want lots and lots of printing on. He's got a lot of these paper guys in his back pocket. Anyway, he reaches out. He's my drummer, and
by the way, if you didn't know, Joe is the lead singer of her band,
Six Finger Man Band, yeah. Yeah, we're doing both covers and originals. Yeah, exactly.
You do originals also.
So I'm working on originals right now. Yeah, so the covers are taking their toll on me. So I bet I'm gonna come up with some originals. But
it's like working with clip art your whole career and not getting to design something original.
yeah, exactly. You could put all the glitter you want to on the clip art. It's still clip art. Yeah. But one of the things that he said, which it resonated with me, and I wanted to share it with our listeners, was, this is all great. I'm glazing over half of it, and I'm really tuned in with the other half. But how do I sell it, to my customers? How do I speak intelligently about this when I'm trying to get it across to maybe my preferred vendor or, the people that I need to communicate to in order to make the sale? And I thought, well, this would be a great thing to bring up on the show because that's a reality. I mean, if people can't see the vision on how to buy it, I mean, we're flooding obviously the market right now with this is how it's executed. Yeah. But how do you sell it? How do you actually start and help your customer who doesn't have the vision for this? They know they like this complicated and interesting stuff, but how do you actually get out there with a blank canvas, no catalog, salesman, and actually, hand that brochure over that doesn't exist, to your customer. Yeah.
That's a great point. And I'm sure we take it for granted because we kind of live and breathe this a lot. But I think a lot of it starts, number one, I guess, would be you got to learn it yourself. How are you going to sell something that you don't know about? And so, this podcast is a good start, but Pinterest, you got to see what's out there before you can help your customer. You might see it from us, and like Jason said, he doesn't know how to sell it, so he needs to keep watching us and seeing what we're posting because he needs to learn about it. Because it's hard to sell what you don't know, because I think eventually it'll show that you're just, I saw this in a catalog and I'm trying to sell it without doing it. Having just a little bit more knowledge than the customer, I think, is a great start. So I'll say on that first one, follow the podcast, go on Pinterest, either follow our boards or start your own, and then go to the mall, start seeing what other brands are doing so you can see the difference between corporate sewing or corporate embroidery thread and fashion retail sewing thread. So I guess that would be number one. Yeah. Number two would be just take a current design that you're already selling your customer, and whether your vendor can do it or not, or you can hit us up and we can recommend some people that might be able to help you, is go ahead and just be proactive. Take that corporate embroidered logo, or even if it's just their text, and sew it out with a different stitch, sew it out in a different thread, try different locations, or something that's just different from what they're used to, and then give it to them. That's a great way for them to see, I just thought this was embroidery, not knowing that there's different thread types and different stitches. So I think that could be a good way to start that conversation.
Just as important as to level up that design, to communicate with your customer, and to surround yourself with a bit more of these important looks and this different stylistic approach, is also really partnering up with your vendor. I mean, it's so important that that relationship with your vendor is tight. Maybe they can't do, or at least they think they can't. In my opinion, I think everybody can do everything if they just discipline themselves.
If they just try.
Yeah, just get in there and get dirty. That's how you're gonna learn. But I think that everybody at some point is gonna need to have that sit down with their vendor and say, this is what I'm really looking for. And they're gonna say, okay, we're not there yet, but here's something that we are doing. And that's where you really want to take that. Your vendor should be supporting you like that. They should show you the swatches and examples and samples of things that they're innovating, just by necessity, because that's how it naturally occurs, in our industry.
Yeah.
So, I think that's another thing that's worth mentioning, is that, your vendor may not know exactly how to do it, but they're probably working on something very similar, and they're probably getting really efficient at it. So it might be worth, sending pictures of that to your customer, saying, hey, how about I do this with your logo?
Yeah, good point. And for the people that are outsourcing their embroidery, there's thousands of embroiders. They might not be local, but there's thousands of embroiders out there that if your current embroiderer isn't doing it and they don't want to do it, cool. Just use them for your their core competencies, and then find someone else that can do some of those specialty things. For our audience that are manufacturers, I think you need to experiment yourself. Take the time, even if it's on weekends, try something different than what you're normally doing. I know it's hard during the week because things are moving fast and you got orders and you got staff and you got to keep everything running. But when things slow down, maybe on the weekend, try something new. Yeah. I know our girl Ramona, she just said that she just bought some Tex 40 sewing thread and she's going to start testing that out. And so I think that's a great way to start. You need to make sure you can do it before you sell it, is I think the big lesson here.
Absolutely. Yep. Great point.
So I would think kind of towards the end of what you said for number 3 would be this is what we've done here at Amber for years and years and years of pitching it with market research examples. So what we do, we'll go ahead and take their design or some of their branding or do something ourselves, mock it up, but then draw an arrow, to the decoration and make a bigger window and show a piece of Abercrombie, show a chain stitch, show a zigzag or a whip stitch. And for us, that's what worked most of the times. We would say, here it is, kind of what you asked for, but then here's what we think could really happen with it. And most of our portfolio is from people just going off of their design that we did for them and then a market research image. They don't need to worry. They don't need to know that behind the scenes we're freaking out trying to figure out how to get it made. We were just trying to get it made. And so I know that kind of goes against my number 2, but sometimes you got to go a little rogue to get something different than what you've always done. So that's been a great idea. And like, you can tell them more on using Wilcom. They can use photorealistic mock-ups to try to use that as a selling point.
Right, exactly. I don't think there's anything wrong with going off script. I feel like my entire career has been based off of going off traditional script, especially with screen print and embroidery. And I think that's what helps to push the industry into some newer trends and different effects. And it also makes somebody who's been in the industry for 15, 20 years really appreciate when they see something that's been developed properly, and it's been, something so simple. I see it all the time, and I do everything I can to give credit where credit's due. I didn't think of that. That's amazing. Who did this? And let's see what we can do to plug them on social media or give them some credit, because it's it's just a wonderful artwork form that I would like to say that I'm obsessed with, but I feel like it chose me. I had no choice.
Yeah. And I think that's a good idea for people not to be scared. It's okay to not all customers are going to choose that. But once you get that first customer to say, let's do it, then you already have a foundation. You have an embroidery piece. Now you can start showing your other clients or other teammates, from the sales department to the design department. Even if you're a small business, you have raving fans. So how can you get them pumped about it and then use their example? Even if you give them a discount on trying something out, then you can use that for yourself to show other people that, here's your corporate embroidery and here's your lifestyle embroidery. So
yep, absolutely agree. Yep.
So kind of going in with mock-ups is doing photorealistic mock-ups. And we'll show you a couple examples of, there are layered Photoshop templates out there. Some are free, some cost money, but it looks like an actual patch. It looks like actual embroidery. It looks like felt or twill or canvas, and really try to wow them. And if they can't imagine it, even with market research, then you mock it up and do it with their actual design and try to make it look as realistic as possible. I know AI will help with that eventually when they can get the text and image thing right. But for now, you use those mock-ups. If you go to our Dudes of Thread if you go to our Dudes of Thread website that Joe just launched yesterday, you'll see that it looks like a narrowed edge patch. And again, it's all computer generated. So making your mock-ups look professional, not just 2D flat vector, is bringing it in, and whether you do it or outsource it, make it look more realistic. And I think that'll help the customer jump on board faster.
Absolutely. I mean, to this day, I still have people that in previous companies that I've worked for that will still look out and say, hey, they'll reach out and say, I need, none of the artists here do the mock-ups like you do. I want the stitches to look real. I want everything to look as real as possible because this is a big account and we can't be messing around. And I'm like, okay, let's, here's what we can do for you. And everyone really appreciates that extra, elevated attention to detail because it just really fills in the gaps for their customer. Customer asks a lot less questions. You want to strike when the iron's hot as a sales, somebody in a sales position, and you just, you want your customer to ask you the least amount of questions possible. You want your customer to just, sign the deal and let's just move on already.
Yep, make it easy for them.
And so, make it easy for them, absolutely, if you can.
Love that. And then just real quick to wrap it up, if all four fail, not necessarily if all four fail, this could be in conjunction with the others, but take your branding or logo or a design or a statement or your local state that you're in and create one big sheet or, put it together in a document, and you do it with your logo. Do standard embroidery with embroidery thread. Do something with embroidery thread with different stitch types. Do some sewing thread in a different application. Do some applique, do a patch, and then just have a sheet, scan it, or show for those people that are coming into your shop, show them. And that way they can be like, ooh, I want it like that. A lot of times we got extra business when we would post on social media that we did a basic felt arched applique with 6 letters or 7 letters. We had so many people just say, I want that. And that makes it so much easier in production, makes it smoother. And you're showing people versus just telling them. So that's a great way on a sell. You might be able to sell things, but when you compare it with visuals, I mean, it's going to be hard for the right client to turn that away.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it really comes down to basically leveling up your entire game, by selling these types of looks, challenging yourself, challenging your vendor, and of course, in a way, you're kind of challenging your customer a little bit to think outside the box.
Yes.
And by leveling all those things up, you end up with a higher perceived value. You really feel like, you've got a feather in your hat, especially when the project is complete and the customer's happy, but you usually will be able to reap. The customer will be able to reap better rewards. You get to reap better rewards. It's kind of like the joke grenade, right? The punchline was funny and then it got really funny. And so, you get that product out there and you realize that, yes, the customer's happy. And then once the customer gets that into usually the next person's hands, and they're just like blown away, then it all just reciprocates and they're coming right back to you again for the next big project. And it's a difference as well, which should be some music to sales ears. It's a difference between having a project that's, it could be a 20 to 30% difference in overall points for profit just because of that higher perceived value, even though your some of these techniques might cost a little bit more, but man, you're talking about, when you're thinking about it like, profit per piece that's going out the door, man, that really makes you think,
We're all doing this for the end wearer. Everything we do and talk about here, while we're not the target demographic at all times, that end wearer is why we're making this and why we want it to be great, because you're competing with big retail brands, things that they have in their closet. They're only going to end up wearing that piece if it feels like something that they believe in, not just a uniform that they got for free. It's something that when they look in the closet, they see the difference. And again, we want that shelf life to be longer. We don't want it to end up in the landfill. And so in order to do that, you have to really make something that end wearer is going to appreciate and use over and over again, so it doesn't become just a wasteful piece that so many one color screen printed Gildan shirts end up in the t-shirt graveyard called Goodwill. So we're trying to go the other way on that.
Absolutely. Now, good point. That's a great point. And we're trying to keep it out of the landfills. So
thanks, Jason, for challenging us to bring up some new content, because we got it. We just need to share it.
And speaking of like leveling up, we are getting a few more entries, and we definitely we're hungry for more. So that's what this little pitch is all about, is we need more entries for our Level Up Your Logo segments. That particular segment, if you don't know about it, it's basically taking a logo that you might be working with already. It could be an existing customer, it could be maybe somebody you're trying to pitch, and it's got we're gonna provide you with the link, fill out the form, send us graphically what you're looking at right now, and send it on in. We want to see what you're working on. We want to see what we can do to help you level up your logo, and we will actually take footage of our team walking through the process of what we would do to level up that logo, and we'd be really excited to see how that segment goes here on the show.
Yeah, man. And I mean, we do this on a daily basis internally, but we want to pass that on to you guys, because not everyone can get to that creative level during the week, or sometimes ever. We want to help our community and show that all it takes is a few ideas, and then you got to execute it, obviously, but a few ideas to get that customer to not only reorder, but to have them stick around longer, because they know you're not just an order taker, you're a true partner. You collab with them, and you're there to make their business better. So we want to help you help others, and just send us the email or DM us, and we're going to be going through some in the future episodes.
All right, that wraps up our show for today, but we're so glad that you joined us. If you haven't, please like and subscribe. It really means a lot to us. Leave some comments. Let us know what you thought of it, if you liked it, didn't like it, etc. We're always anxious to make our show better.
Stitch on, fashion to the people.
Whip Stitch Willie here, looking for more entries on our Stitch Count Contessa segment. Please respond in the social media platform you saw this in as soon as possible. You've got 1 week before we reveal the winners.